What's happening, guys? This is Mike's Total Dragon channel. Tonight I am going to finally get around to talking about Absolute Batman Annual #1. Very late to the party in talking about it. I've been meaning to make this video for quite a while, but never could find the right time. Now I'm going to go ahead and do it because I'm basically getting rid of this issue tomorrow. I'm taking it to the comic shop to turn in. Along with a bunch of other stuff for store credit. So I figured if not now, then never. But this issue here, Absolute Batman Annual #1, I have never seen in my over 40 years of collecting comic books. I have never seen an annual be talked about as much as this one has. I don't know if I've ever known an annual to get a reprint, but yet this one has. This is probably, I don't know if it's the issue of the year, but it's definitely in contention. It's definitely the most talked about, and I'll talk on this a little bit later here, a little bit later in the video. It's definitely the most talked, or at least parts of it are the most talked about book, scenes of the year. Daniel Warren Johnson, obviously right now, insanely popular. He really, over the last year and a half, has really hit superstar status. You know, he's really taking off with his To Do a Powerbomb, his work on Transformers. I believe he did a Beta Ray Bill miniseries. You know, it has just really, really taken off. His work has a very kinetic style feel. It's very reminiscent of 90s Image, and the artwork is just very big and in your face, and it fits with a book like Absolute Batman. But Daniel, like I said, Daniel Warren Johnson, definitely one of the creators who had a huge last 2 years has really, like I said, he's really taken off, and he being put on Absolute Batman, which is a book in itself, which has blown up over the last year. You know, that is a recipe for success. That's a recipe for huge sales. You know, I was someone who, when the first Absolute titles were announced, I really was, I'm not going to say I was skeptical. I knew issue 1 of Absolute Batman would do really well, but I did not have any idea that issues 5, 6, 7 would do as well. You know, issue 6 and 7 are getting multiple reprints. Issue 1 is on its 10th reprint. I knew that a brand new, out of continuity first issue of Batman book would sell gangbusters. I did not know that issue, like I said, 6, 7, and 8 of that book would still be selling gangbusters. I did not think that issues 14 and 15 would have orders of 300,000, 200,000, whatever it is, you know. But Absolute Batman has been the book of the year, and Absolute Batman Annual, you know, is probably the biggest single issue of the past year, and we'll get into why right here. So a lot of this book here came out online, specifically certain pages. The book opens up here with a young Bruce Wayne with his dad. His dad's reading a newspaper, and he says, "Why did they do it, Dad?" And his father says, "I wish I knew, Bruce. What do we do? How do we make them stop?" He says, "I don't know. I'm just one person. I don't know how to fix the world. But I know what I'm good at. Teaching." Now, all this is very important right here. All this stuff right here is very important. Every student I meet, I know I have a chance to make a difference in their life. So maybe someday one of my students won't make the same mistakes these people made. So Bruce is sitting with his father. Very touching moment here. They're reading about a bombing here in Gotham, or in Gotham Globe, extremist bombing. And his father is just kind of very frustrated. He doesn't know how to explain how to fix it, you know, other than doing what he does best, being a teacher. So now, this scene right here is just a really incredible scene. Batman with this flamethrower. Now, this issue was advertised as how Batman got the Batmobile. So we see we're in Slaughter Swamp, city's limits. We see kind of like this homeless encampment. We see this preacher guy there. This guy's waiting outside of a pawn shop. Bruce pulls in. He tells him he finally made it. And then basically this guy here, he made all this stuff for Bruce to go pick up. As requested, explosives, modified rubber bullets, beanbags, the works. Bruce says, non-lethal? The guy says, well, they're less lethal. Bruce says, that's good enough, or whatever. And then we kind of see right here, Bruce is asking questions about the town. He goes, that large project on the edge of town, what's going on? Some company came in with big money, big promises, 3 months in construction. 3 months into construction, they up and left. Just like that. Who knows why? What's left is what you saw when you drove in. Where are all those people from? Hell if I know. They came looking for something better, didn't find it. So basically, Bruce drove past this homeless encampment of people that had came to this town to work. Then the factory closed up and they left those people there. Bruce hears about this fight, goes outside. He sees some of the people here getting attacked. Bruce steps in, breaks it up. These guys are hassling these people here. Says, you're a stranger. This is not your town. So, big fight here. Then, this is another very important section. Stop. Father Peters, get out of the way. And the preacher says, Jeffrey, I've known you since before you could walk. This is not you. And he has nothing to say. He goes, I. And so they just all scramble off. The preacher takes Bruce back to his cabin. He patches him up a little bit. Bruce says, is this you? The preacher says, a long time ago, I made a lot of friends during that time period. All of us chasing peace, a never-ending journey, it seems. Then Bruce says, there's a tattoo on that boy's arm. What's it mean? The preacher gives him the lowdown. He says, 6 months ago, we had an outsider come recruiting. I don't know much about him, except that he's been filling the holes in the hearts of our boys, of all the men here. He's given them a dark place to go. So basically, someone has come to the town and has kind of begun to turn their minds around, directing their anger towards these people at this homeless this encampment of migrant workers or wherever they came from. They're very angry at them. We see here, they're overlooking this little shanty town. We see the police pull up, and the police are on the same side as these guys who's going to go into this encampment here and beat up all these people. Now we start to get towards the pages and panels that have been seen around a lot on the internet. This guy here, he's talking a bunch of stupid stuff. I'm the new truth. I am power. You know, pure power, white power. And he's got his hand stuck out in some big salute. And then we get one of the pages, and the panels has been passed around a lot. Batman just shows up out of nowhere. Huge double page spread, Daniel Warren Johnson, of him striking it, breaking the arm. Batman proceeds to fuck up all these people who came to beat these foreign folks to death, these foreign workers. Hits this guy right here, one-winged angel, Kenny Omega's finisher. Hits another guy with a V-trigger, yet another. Two scenes right here that show Daniel Warren Johnson's love for wrestling. Just some really great, intense artwork scenes here. Boom, boom, boom. You know, just each fist being thrown is a boom, 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 boom. So just very powerful imagery. And then we see the preacher yet again. And he says, "What are you doing? This won't fix it. It won't." And he tells the preacher tells him as Batman looks on, he goes, "I don't know how to make it better. Only know how to not make it worse. This isn't the way." And then Bruce says, "This is my way." So we get back to these guys. This is their base or whatever you want to call it. And all these guys who got their ass kicked come running back. Batman finds the Batmobile right here. He fires it up. He's coming for these guys, and we see he just breaks down the fucking door. Then he's got this flamethrower. He says, "You guys are roaches. There's only one way to deal with those." He's just burning everything in sight. Scorched earth. And then the preacher shows up again. And he starts giving these guys first aid. He's bandaging them. And Bruce says, "Why?" And the preacher says, "You have your way, and I have mine." Bruce has this flashback. "You did a lot of cool stuff when you were younger, Dad." "I don't know about that. You made a difference. You did something." And Bruce says, "I'm going to do that too. I'm going to be just like you." And then we see here that Bruce, this photo that Bruce is looking at, is of his father and the preacher. So his father and the preacher knew each other. This is a copy of Bruce's father's picture, the same one the preacher has in his house. And he says, Bruce's dad tells him, "That was before the mustache. We barely knew what we were doing then. But I guess I barely know what I'm doing now. But you, Bruce, I know your nature. I know who you are deep down. You have a strong, compassionate heart. All you have to do is be yourself, no matter what you do. I'll always be proud of you." And then when the book ends, and then Bruce is sitting here in front of the Batmobile, his face buried in his arm, and he's devastated over everything that just went down. So that is the end of... There's two stories in here, but for all intents and purposes, the Daniel Warren Johnson story is the one that is the big deal. And I've seen a lot of people online, they were saying, you know, because for the longest time before I got this issue, I had only seen, and still, even still after it came out, I only saw a handful of panels. People were only posting the arm break panel, the one-winged angel, the V-trigger, this one here with the flamethrower. And so you really think that that's all this issue is, you know. And I saw so many people saying, while they were talking about this issue, they were saying, oh, you don't get the point of the story. You don't get the point of the story. To say that this story is just about violence towards these white supremacists. People were saying, oh, there's more to it than that. There's more to it than that. And I enjoy these panels here. I enjoy the artwork. You know, this is incredible 2-page scene. This is incredible. You know, this one-winged angel. I like wrestling. You know, I like V-triggers. But I feel like these panels here were just, they so overlooked the point of the story. You know, these pages here, they overshadowed what Daniel Warren Johnson was trying to tell, because he was just so powerful. And the story itself, I feel like, was just given the minimalist of, you know, the minimal amount of lip service. You know, and I've had a lot of people tell me, well, that's the story that Daniel Warren Johnson wants to tell. And I'm fine with that. And maybe he told this story. He didn't have, you know, we see that this book here, there's 2 stories in this one book. So maybe he, being Daniel Warren Johnson, didn't have enough pages to tell the story that he really wanted to tell. You know, he didn't have enough to go into depth with the preacher, with the town that Bruce comes to, Slaughter Swamp. Maybe he did not have enough to talk about, you know, to show the company coming in what led to these people here. Because the preacher even says to himself, the preacher says, you know, I've known you since before you could walk. So there was nothing done with that. But like I said, maybe that's because of page count. But, you know, and this is really part of the problem I have with this issue. You know, this story here, this is a real world topic. Hate crimes, violence, brutality on people from other races, people of other religions. You know, that's a real topic. You know, these aren't, like I said, these aren't fucking Ninja Man bats, you know. So I feel like, based on the severity of this topic and, you know, how we see this type of things going on currently, this is such a very heavy real world issue. It deserved more of an analysis and to be talked about than just to be grazed over the way it is. I would have liked to have seen more about the preacher, you know. Like, we don't even get his first name. We just get his last name. You know, the guy says Father Peters. Does this guy even have a first name? He's just Father Peters. We don't know nothing about him. I would have liked to have seen what drove Jeffrey to join this type of group. Because Father Peters says he known him since before he could walk. The corruption of the police force. Yet another real world topic that is just glazed over. It's all glazed over. But what's magnified is just these super. I mean, the panels and pages here are badass. Don't get it twisted. You know, this is these shots here are what are magnified. So when someone says, "Oh, you don't get the point of that story," you know, the point of the story is violence. That's what Daniel Warren Johnson wanted to give you. And I'm fine with that. But like I said, on a real world topic, on a topic that, you know, you can cut your television on, you can see news, and you can see about this type of stuff going on, a little more exploration into it would have been appreciated. And the best part about this whole story, now I will say this. There is no way to, you know, these hate crimes, this xenophobia, attacking minorities, there is no logical explanation for it. And you cannot explain it. Because it makes no sense to do that. And because it makes no sense, maybe that is why there is no further exploration of it. You know, how can you logically, you can't explain bigotry. You can't explain hatred of races that have done nothing towards you. You know, you can't explain any of that. So because of that, maybe that is why, you know, there's no further story on it. But I feel like the most powerful part of this whole story, Bruce has this flashback of his father telling him, "You have a strong and compassionate heart. All you have to do is be yourself no matter what you do. I'll be proud of you." He has this memory, and he looks down at his hands that are covered in blood from the violence that he shed tonight. And he cries. He cries and realizes that his father would not be proud of what his actions are, and that he cannot take the path that his father took. That is not who he is, and that is not in his makeup. His makeup is violence and anger and brutality. And this here, you wouldn't even know that this was in the fucking book, because it was so much, all of what of the book was shared. As I've said before, V-Triggers, One-Winged Angels, Batman with a flamethrower, burning down some Nazis, you know? And that's a super, super cool scenes. Really great pages and panels. Hey, you'll never meet anybody who's a bigger fan of a Nazi getting a V-Trigger or a One-Winged Angel than me. But that being said, I thank Daniel Warren Johnson. I really would have liked to see some more exploration, some stronger storytelling about the topic that they're talking about here. You know, that's all I'm saying is, you know, this is a real world topic, and I would like to have seen it addressed as such. Not, you know, like I said, these aren't Ninja Man bats that Batman just casually beats up and then it's over with, you know. So I feel like the viral scenes from this book overshadowed the actual impact that it could have had. The impact of what Bruce's realization is, that he'll never make his father proud. And that's a real shame. And I also feel like they could have done more with the storytelling in this. But that's just me, and that's just what I would have liked to have seen. I'm not going to sit here and tell Daniel Warren Johnson what he should have done. He told the story that he wanted to tell. You know, it was probably very cathartic for him to get all this stuff off his chest. You know, I can imagine that he was watching the news, or he had heard stories in the media, and he had to get it out of him. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm fine with that. You know, what I think the story should have been is really of no consequence except to myself. He told what he wanted to tell. I got from it what I wanted to get. So I can't sit here and say that it's bad, you know, because it's not bad. I just personally, I would like to have seen a little bit more in depth with the actual real life problems here, instead of just treating it like a you know, boss fight in a video game or whatever. But outside of that, Absolute Batman Annual #1, probably the single issue of the year. And like I said at the start, definitely the very first time I've seen an annual go to multiple printings. So if you do not have a copy of this, pick one up. If you don't have a first printing, I'm sure the reprint is already out now, or at least on its way out. And if you like this issue, Daniel Warren Johnson, he is cranking stuff out left and right. Not only is he an accomplished artist, he's also an accomplished writer. He just wrapped up a miniseries from Image where he teamed up with Riley Rossimo, I believe it is. So not only is he just a writer and artist, he's also a writer. And he is all over the place right now. And another fun fact about this book, Kenny Omega himself, the wrestler, shared pages from this. So Daniel Warren Johnson's reach is even spreading into the professional wrestling world. But Absolute Batman Annual #1, issue of the year for a reason. Some of the best pages of the year. But I wish they would have done a little bit more. But that's just me. So till next time, you guys take care. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.